So Star Wars gaming is, let's be honest, beyond dead right now. There's so much stuff in the pipeline, but in terms of current games that are out right now and being supported or exciting stuff right around the corner, there's essentially just nothing to talk about, nothing concrete anyway, and that makes it feel like there's kind of nothing to be excited for in the Star Wars gaming scene. Now, there are a few games slated for 2024, however, but there's no concrete evidence on when exactly they'll be launching. So today, I kind of just wanted to go over any of the little tidbits we've heard over the last few weeks and months and try to get at least somewhat of an understanding when it comes to the current state of Star Wars gaming. Now, the two games that are coming out this year that I just touched on are Star Wars Outlaws and Star Wars Hunters. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of stuff about Star Wars Outlaws. It is the game being made by Massive Entertainment and published by Ubisoft. It is a big open world style game, not quite an RPG in the fact that we do have the same character that we all play as. We can't really create our own character and role play in that sense, but it is going to have some level of RPG elements, and it seems like it is going to be pretty damn impressive, actually being nominated for one of the most anticipated games of 2024. We then have Star Wars Hunters. That game is a 4v4 arena shooter that is going to be launching on Apple, Android, and also on the Switch as well, so it's not quite just a mobile game, but it is essentially a mobile game, but probably one of the most well-made mobile games that I've ever played personally. I've put in about probably 200 or so hours in the soft launch since November 2021, and although the way the game has been handled is absolutely terrible, the game itself is actually really, really solid, and I think it is going to do really well. Now, on top of that, there is also the KOTOR remake, but in my opinion, that game is dead in the water. I just do not believe that game will be made at this point. I desperately hope I'm wrong, but it kind of just seems like Sony just don't want to follow through with the remake, and so I really just think that game will never come out, unfortunately. Initially, I would have said it could be in 2024, but again, I would be shocked if the game comes out at all, let alone this year. So I thought I would throw that in there, but yeah, realistically, that game, it is not coming out in 2024. There's also the Respawn FPS and the Bit Reactor and Respawn RTS game that could also launch in 2024, but again, that is very unlikely. I'd be probably guessing 2025 or maybe even 2026 for some of those games, depending on what else Respawn has in the pipeline. So yeah, it's a possibility one of those potentially comes out this year. I guess the RTS is probably a little bit of a smaller game. Real-time strategy games are not quite as in depth in terms of how long they generally take to make, at least not from what I know anyway. So there's a chance that could come out this year, but again, I just don't think that will be the case. But anyway, back to the games that are confirmed in Outlaws and Hunters. Star Wars Hunters has been delayed since 2021. It was delayed from 2021 to 2022, then from 2022 to 2023, and then it was delayed again last year to 2024. So the game is beyond ready to launch right now. It is already in soft launch for over 2 years. Like I mentioned, I've put in probably 150 to 200 hours or so. So that game could technically launch tomorrow, considering how ready the game would be. It is most likely just being waited on in terms of the release window. They would want to do some marketing leading up to it, and they want to make sure that there's nothing else big launching around that, especially other Star Wars games. So I feel like that is the only thing they're waiting on, really, is just when to release the game rather than waiting for it to be finished, for example, because like I said, it's been pretty much delayed since 2021, and in my opinion, in November 2021, when it did soft launch, the game already felt really, really solid. Now, before we go any further, guys, I wanted to give you a quick but exciting announcement. I've actually overhauled my Patreon, and there is now a free tier on the Patreon. Yes, free Patreon, while still giving you some of the awesome bonuses that we do have over there on the Patreon. Signing up for free will give you access to my private Discord channel. You'll also get the power to vote on the content that you get to see here on the channel, having an actual say in all of the content that goes up, not only on this channel, but my other channels as well. And most excitingly, I'm going to be doing a heap of giveaways throughout this year, giving away stuff like the new merch, for example. There's going to be new merch drops every 2 months or so, giving away some games throughout the year, and all of those giveaways are going to be done through the Patreon. All you need to do is click this button that says join for free. There's no catch to it at all. You're not going to get spammed with emails or anything like that. It is literally just a free tier to the Patreon for those who aren't interested in paying. And by doing so, you're going to be more involved in the community and also get some chances to win giveaways, vote on the content you want to see, and even get access to the private Discord channel, like I said. So be sure to head to the Patreon link down in the description, click that button that says join for free. But with that being said, let's get stuck back into the video. Now, in terms of Outlaws, initially, it did seem like that would be in the latter half of 2024 to me. Most of the big AAA titles launch in the fall, but then recently Tom Henderson and Insider Gaming talked about the fact that Ubisoft seemed to be targeting the first half of 2024 for Outlaws. So that has then thrown any idea of the launch date out the window for me. It could launch in maybe April or May. It could launch in freaking November or December. I genuinely just don't know at this point. Now, despite that stuff from Tom Henderson and Insider Gaming, there were also conflicting reports that was, I think, on like the 3rd of January this year, where on the Disney Parks website it actually stated Outlaws was coming out later in 2024, but then IGN made a comment on that on Twitter, at which point Ubisoft actually reached out to IGN to correct them on the release window, stating it was just slated for 2024 and not later in 2024. So that right there kind of proves that any of these could be true. Many people point towards it being early in the year. The Disney Parks site said otherwise, then Ubisoft corrects them and pretty much just says the blanket time period of 2024 as a whole, meaning it is really just up in the air right now. And they pretty much said by saying 2024 that it could be anywhere. They didn't point to any part of the year. And like I said, that could mean it could be as early as something like April, or it could literally come out in December. And realistically, until they announce it, we will just never know. Now, I do understand the need these days to not lock down a launch date, so that if you do need to delay the game, it doesn't really have to be that big of a deal. For example, if they were planning the game to launch in April and then it did need a delay, let's just say they found something really terribly wrong and it took them an extra 6 months, they could still technically delay that internally and not say a word to us, and then the game would still launch in 2024. We would all think that was when it was initially planned, so therefore none of us would ever know the game actually ran into some big issues. Even if they fix the issues, if they announce a delay, that obviously kind of comes across to the players and also the investors that there's something wrong, and that kind of casts a bit of doubt into the players' minds. So by not giving a launch date and just saying it's going to be out in 2024, that is obviously the safe way to play it. And I do understand that, but at the same time, I do wish both of these games, not just Outlaws, but probably especially Hunters, to be honest, considering it's been delayed 3 times now, I wish they would just show some commitment to their fan bases and tell us at least a ballpark idea of when that game is coming out. It doesn't need to be the exact date. It doesn't even need to be, for example, the month or even the season of the year. It could literally just be the first half or the second half, and that at least gives us somewhat of an idea. I know that then still plays into if they need to delay it. For example, if they say it's in the first half and then it comes out in the second, that is still an issue. But in my opinion, announcing a delay isn't that big of a deal. I don't think that many people really care that much, provided the game looks good. If the game looks terrible and then you delay it, then obviously that's not a good look at all. But in the first place, the game didn't look good. So I think any game that looks good, people will still show some commitment to it, even if it has been delayed. The amount of times I have played games that were delayed and they turned out to be good, that is kind of proof to me that it's worth sticking with them. The Last of Us Part 2 won Game of the Year, and that game was delayed. We all, I'm sure, played Jedi Survivor last year. That game was delayed, and yes, it did have some issues at launch, but overall the game was still fantastic. And so yeah, for me, announcing a delay isn't that big of a deal, and that's why I think I'm okay with them announcing a rough time period. And then if they do have to delay it, then like I said, I think the majority of the player base doesn't really care, provided they are just transparent about the game and the state that it's in and stuff like that. Regardless, both of these games are a prime example of how the Star Wars gaming scene is kind of just in the mud right now, despite the future of it looking absolutely fantastic. All the games that are slated to come out, they all sound and look really, really interesting. There's like still 6 or 7 different Star Wars games that are on the way, and I'm sure there's probably more that have been greenlit and are currently being worked on, or at least conceptualized, that we don't even know about yet. So the future of Star Wars gaming looks phenomenal, realistically, but right now we are definitely in the mud, and I think it is a lot to do with the way that they just handle the announcing of release dates and stuff like that. I really think that it could be handled a lot better, and I know that there is a lot of stuff that goes into it. I'm not saying it's as simple as just tell us the release date, but I do think regardless it could be handled better nonetheless. So that is the current state of Star Wars gaming. I'm sure you guys have already been paying attention, but for any of you who were maybe just living under a rock and haven't paid attention to Star Wars gaming, that is where we're at. We do have some games on the way, but realistically we just know pretty much nothing about them at all, the exception being Star Wars Hunters, that we do know a lot about the game simply because it has been in soft launch, but in terms of the actual release date and stuff, we are completely in the dark. I'm very interested to hear what you guys think. Which game is launching first in your opinion, Star Wars Outlaws or Star Wars Hunters? Be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.